The co-intelligence model is used to benefit individuals. Dr. Malik has talked about this extensively, how we can become empowered individually. We asked ourselves a different question. How can we put our community at the center and ask the fundamental question, how is AI in service to the needs and the expectations and the future state of where we want education to be and where we hope and expect our young people to take their rightful place in the world? So we began with that proposition, that value proposition. Rather than moving quickly to creating all of these systems and creating all these regulations and policies associated with mitigating against plagiarism, we had those conversations initially, but we had a grassroots movement that created an AI advisory committee, also created an AI student advisory committee, and from the grassroots we began thinking about cross-functionally, how can AI show up in different places within our AI ecosystem and our learning ecosystem to really leverage change and impact. So we weren't interested in just mere adoption or the technical change that comes as a result of adopting. We're not just interested in the efficiency and optimizing the status quo. We're very much interested in transforming and disrupting the automaticity of the systems that currently exist now. And so that's part of the promise, and that's part of the way in which we began to think about it epistemologically and philosophically. It wasn't just a plan around integration. It wasn't just a plan around adoption. It was about how can we give our students and our community exceptional experiences which lead to exceptional outcomes. Because ultimately, we are in service to the equity and to the promise of what our young people need in order to take their rightful place in the world. And that's been the way in which we have developed our approach towards developing an AI ecosystem and moving from AI literacy to AI fluency, which means that our young people and our individuals who are part of our ecosystem are not just consumers of AI, but that they're savvy and critical in terms of how to utilize it. But more than that, we want to get them to a place where they're leveraging it to be extraordinary creators, critical thinkers, and autonomous individuals.
I love that. One of the things, so as I mentioned, I spend most of my time working with corporations and how do they think about AI and how it's going to transform their workforce. And one of the biggest questions I get is, but how do I think about data privacy and accuracy and what kinds of permissioning can I put in place? And one of the things I love about what you all are talking about, and this is where I see education and especially K through 12 education leading, which gives me a lot of hope, is that you're actually not worried about making sure you have everything ticked and tied. You're trying to make sure that you can make this technology more accessible to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, so that we don't fall behind as a country in terms of our ability to use this to make technological advances and to move our workforce forward. And so kudos to all of you for taking an innovation and entrepreneurial mindset. I would love to go a little bit deeper and kind of get examples from each of you on tactical and practical things you've seen happen as it relates to unlocking this type of generative AI technology with either students or teachers or even with administrators inside of the school system.
I can, like I mentioned, there are two sides of our platform at Magic School. There's a teacher, educator, assistive side, and then there's the student side. I'll focus a little bit on the student side in a really practical use case for an educator, because this use case serves both the educator and the student. So I was an English teacher when I taught, and one of the hardest things about being an English teacher is grading student work and giving feedback authentically on student work. I had 170 students in my high school. The ability for me to give them areas of strength, areas of growth was nearly impossible on top of all my other responsibilities, especially as an early career teacher at the time. So we have a tool on our platform called the Writing Feedback Tool. So what a teacher will do is they will take a rubric they've created or the state's created to evaluate a student. They can actually attach that rubric to the AI tool. They can inform the rubric in a number of different ways, but let's say in this circumstance, they can say, I want you to focus your feedback for my students on writing mechanics, which is a column on my rubric. So they can direct the AI, here's the rubric, focus on writing mechanics and the feedback you give to students. And then the teacher can launch that tool to their classroom. A student joins the room where that tool exists, and then that student can take their essay, they can connect their Google Drive, or they can just copy paste the essay into the tool and click, give me feedback. And they'll get really thoughtful areas of strength, really thoughtful areas of growth from AI. Didn't write the essay for them, right? But gave them really aligned feedback to what their teacher was looking for. And now every single individual student gets that feedback. So the student wins because they can improve their essay. They get the critical feedback. They can get that to be better before they get the grade from their teacher in that first grade pass feedback. And I can tell you this, like, as a teacher, you win too, because the essays are better. And they're easier to grade when they're all in the same kind of bucket of like, okay, they've already gotten a first pass of feedback, and now my feedback can be pushing them to a higher level and giving them their final grade. So we're not taking the human out of the loop here, right? We have first pass feedback from the AI, and then we're giving it to the teacher to give that final touch and say, hey, let's push you even further for the next time that you write this essay. So really, really practical use case, and one that is as easy to use as I just described.
How, just to further that, how is your tool helping to ensure things like creativity and approach to the problem that they solved, or answering the question? I remember reading essays, or some of the most innovative essays I've seen as I've gone through applications for admissions have been people who like turned the question on its head. And I'm like, oh, this is like intellectually so curious and such a creative way to approach the problem. How do you ensure that creativity doesn't get lost in the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the scenario I just described, you can maybe just take out the state rubric and you can say, give the student 3 ideas to make this much more creative. Be an idea partner for them. We also just have tools that are simply about being an idea partner, or a more open-ended chatbot with some guardrails. And let's say that you're launching your classroom science fair projects. This is ideation moment of them thinking about what their science fair project will be. And you can launch them a tool called Idea Partner. That's another AI tool in the platform. And the student can say, I want to do something, I love computers, or I love video games. And you can program the tool to give them, in context, here are 6 or 7 ideas that you might do as a 7th grader in your science fair project. And now that student has a way to start, right? A lot of us who use AI in our daily lives, often it's like our jumping off point. It's our way of like kind of getting some ideas and having a brainstorming partner. So we want to kind of mimic some of those things we might be doing in the professional world with students and the AI tools.
I love that. I just think about even my 7th grade science fair project a long time ago, and bouncing ideas off my dad. And if you don't have that support at home, or you don't have the ability to bounce that idea off your teacher because they're not available, now you have someone who can be a thought partner, or some technology, I guess I should say, who can be a thought partner to you. That's a really great use case. Rebecca, what would you add?
Well, I always go to Antonio for school-specific and student-specific examples, but what I'd say as a bridge is one of the reasons that at CEI we love Magic School, and we partnered very quickly, even though we almost never partner with companies, is that what you'll hear in all of Adeel's stories is that he was an educator first. And there are plenty of problems to solve in K-12 with AI, which I think is why you're seeing so much eager adoption. But they come from a teacher's point of view first. And that's what's really special about Magic School, and a big part of the company's success so far is that it's not a solution looking for a problem. It's a company grounded in the problems that we all live with every day. I think too that the worry of families that young people are going to be taught by robots is a real worry. It's an easy thing in this room to sort of dismiss and think like, oh, those families are Luddites and we'll just ignore them and move faster. But when you think about creativity and you think about the role for putting the human back in the loop, that becomes really critical with young people. And so I think all of the examples you'll hear from us have to do with using technology in its right place in order to enable an educator to be more human and have more time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 2 things in particular that have been incredibly impactful. I definitely want to give accolades to Adeel and Magic School. Adeel was part of our AI advisory committee, so we worked collectively to really identify and think critically about use cases. There were those things that we knew that were going to be extremely impactful for either affecting or impacting efficiency or allowing for innovation. Because of that grassroots consciousness around collective intelligence and leveraging AI in that specific way, there were all the things that we anticipated that we knew were going to be incredibly beneficial. And as you may or may not know, Aurora Public Schools is the 5th largest school district in the state of Colorado, roughly 40,000 students. Of that, 78% are multilingual learners. The vast majority of our district is Title I, suggesting that most of our students qualify for free reduced lunch. So we have an extraordinary wealth within our community, oftentimes neglected and not really understood and acknowledged for what it is. However, the greatest place that we have seen Magic School in particular, working with our students, very passionate educators who are bridge builders for our students, especially newcomers. We have a number of newcomers in our community. What I would say is that the tool itself is definitely part of the leveraging way in which we reach and teach our young people. Our teachers have been phenomenal in working in tandem with that particular tool within Magic School to create these bridges culturally for our students. For example, one of the use cases that we have seen that was totally unanticipated is that we had a number of students who were Farsi speaking, Dari and Pashto speaking, unique languages within our district. Using Magic School, many of our teachers at our elementary school were able to create translated materials for their students and also leverage other technologies such that it was read orally to them. They were also able to create communication to the home and the families that was immediately translatable. If we were to leverage our comms department or ask someone for interpretation, that would be a very lugubrious process within a 40,000 student district. Our teachers took it upon themselves to really build this bridge intentionally, culturally. When our students saw their language, heard their language, and their parents came to our school and knew that we could greet them in their language and see it written, many of them looked at us and looked at our teachers in tears, hugged them, thanked them, and felt a sense of belonging. Now, you can say the AI was not necessarily responsible for that, and it was a huge part of that sort of cultural and collective intelligence that we're trying to build. The first part of ensuring that our young people are academically, socially, and holistically prepared for everything in front of them is to let them know that they belong and that they are included and they are equitable and they have so many extraordinary strengths. The first part is being able to recognize and acknowledge who they are. So that then led to that particular school becoming a pilot for how we reach and teach those unique languages and welcome our newcomers and our newcomer families. And that particular use case has been scaled at our other elementary schools and our middle schools and our high schools. So the sense of belonging, the sense of recognition, the sense of dignity that comes from somebody understanding where you come from and speaking your language literally and figuratively has been enormous. The second piece is that what we have found based on the back-end analysis of our power users with Magic School and other AI technologies, which will soon become a white paper that we will publish, is that we are finding and discovering the same way that Dr. Malik did in the private sector with his Harvard study, is that our teachers who are leveraging AI tools and technologies, now that we have the data after 1 year, they have outperformed their peers academically, significantly so, by double digits. Those schools where you have en masse adoption and people who are building their astute approach to leveraging the AI technology, those schools have improved their performance bands, going from a yellow school to a green school, from an orange to yellow, etc. So we're seeing the academic correlations and we're seeing the performance correlations as well. So I would say the two really profound ways in which we're seeing that happen now, and this is early evidence, is that we are seeing the cultural bridge and the academic bridge, and they really work in tandem. And so I would say that we are continuing to think about and invest more strategically on how to bolster those practices and share those practices at scale.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things, as Antonio shared, that Dr. Ethan Mullock says in the private sector, which is something we try to impart on the employers that we work with, is that in order to actually see adoption of AI in your organization, you need a large majority of your executives to be using it. And even inside of Guild, you can go department and division by division, and where the executive in that division is using AI, you see the proliferation of AI tools and the adoption of generative AI be much higher. You see the output is better, you see productivity increases, and you see their ability to kind of move away from what I would describe as low-level work into higher order work. And that higher order work, it generally tends to be the places where empathy is needed more, where creativity is needed more, where problem solving is needed more. And so I love to hear you say that where teachers are using it more, you're also seeing performance improvements in terms of how the schools are operating. One other thing you touched on that I think is really important is I think we spend a lot of time talking about the fears around AI. I would love for you to, all of you, to share kind of both sides. What fears are you hearing from the communities that you serve and the stakeholders that you talk with, as well as the other side of this, which is how is it creating equity in our communities? I think you shared an example already, Antonio, of creating a sense of inclusion and belonging and meeting the students and their families where they are. What do you see as other powers of this tool in a way that's going to continue to ensure that we bring the state along, that we bring our citizens along, and that we bring our country along?
I can tackle some fears. So, this is what we do all day. So at the macro level, I have a fear, which is that in K-12, we are terrible communicators. We are horrible at marketing. We'll take a good idea and explain why you don't want it. And all you have to do is look at the debacle 15 years ago of trying to land the Common Core standards in the state, in the country, to understand how we have no idea how to communicate and bring people along as a change management practice, and therefore good ideas end up shelved because somebody makes up a narrative that serves them about what K-12 is secretly evilly trying to do to your children. We know this, we've watched it with things like Common Core, but we've never gotten better at it. And so as public sector leaders, as superintendents, as school board members, truly understanding how to communicate about what this is and what it isn't, where it's successful and where it's not, to meet families who are worried or political factions that are worried and really hear them out and figure out how to slowly bring people along is a skill we don't have, and it will be at our own peril. That's my biggest worry. The other thing is, in order to write the plan, we spent a lot of time with people who have far more technical expertise than me. And the thing I think about a lot is they said, you want to be nice to the robots because you're teaching them how to be nice to you, right? But the challenge with most technology is it's actually, and you all know this better than I do, programmed to be nice to you even when you're not nice to it. I have a 9-year-old. If he's being trained and talked to frequently by somebody who's nice to him even when he's a jerk, the person he becomes makes me pretty nervous. And we are raising kids, there's some talk that this next generation after Generation Z might be called the polars because they're growing up in such a polarized environment. We're raising kids who don't have good models about how to have civil dialogue. And if we frequently have them in educational experiences that don't encourage them to figure out that when you're rude to your teacher, you don't get very far, I worry we're exacerbating an already pretty significant problem for young people.
I love that you say that. So I say, Alexa, can you please, all the time. And actually someone came to my house recently and they're like, you're super polite to your listening devices. And I was like, yeah, but what's the other way to do it? And then now I watch my daughter who's obsessed with Taylor Swift. She's 3 and obsessed with Taylor Swift. And she will say, Alexa, please play Cornelia. And I'm like, yeah, you said please. I'm so proud of you. And so I do think we have a role to play in teaching our kids. So, yeah.
I'll touch on Antonio's point around language translation. When I was a principal, we also, in my school building, probably had 30 different languages spoken at home, in a school building of about 600 students. So you can imagine in a place like Aurora Public Schools, it's hundreds of languages spoken. One of the core parts of artificial intelligence generative AI is that it's extraordinary translation, not just the written word, but also speaking. So we have text-to-speech features in our platform as well. So you can hear your native language, one written, but you can also hear it spoken in the proper accent and like in natural language. It is so unbelievably powerful for the student to feel welcomed and feel like they are seen and heard. I can tell you as a principal, one of my greatest shames is there are students who are newcomers to the country who had to walk through the building and every one of their materials in the school building was not in their native language, and they just existed, did their best to learn in a new language, but didn't have the transitional language support that they needed. And AI unlocks that in an extraordinary way for the student in the school building. And then the second part that Antonio touched on is that communication home. Imagine a world 3 years ago where you just, we know that the family school connection is so important for a student's success in schools. And there was just a legion of students, newcomers to the country, students whose families spoke a different language, my parents spoke a different language, who just don't get communication from their schools. Or they only get it in English, and the front office staff speak Spanish, and they can translate it to one other language, but no other folks get communication because it's just too hard for the school. That literally changed the moment that some schools got magic schools, some schools learned how to translate using new AI technology, but you can now, in the snap of a finger, send out your family newsletter that you send out every week in 30 different languages without any additional effort. So when people say, hey, AI doesn't have a practical, it's searching for a practical use case, it's not making an impact in the world yet, talk to a family who speaks a language that was not supported by their school before they got magic school or using some other AI technology to do it, and say that now I know every event that's happening in my school's life, in my child's life. When they come home from school, I can ask them about what happened in school in a completely new way. That is world-changing technology. If that doesn't get you excited about the capacity this technology can add to schools or the public sector or anything, check your pulse. This is exciting, incredible stuff.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's so important. I also grew up in an English as a second language household, and I just remember the number of times trying to explain to my mom something that needed to happen or something she needed to sign, and can you imagine being 6 years old, not totally understanding what the teacher told you, that you now have to speak in a different language to explain to your parents, and they're kind of like, what are you doing? What's a field trip? Where are you going? And so I think it unlocks tremendous power. Antonio, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just simply say, one of the greatest challenges and opportunities that we have right now, one of the challenges that we have is that the technology is accelerating so quickly, and it's creating a sort of environment where we are trying to keep pace with it. That is maybe less so within the public education environment. I know within the private sector, that is your livelihood, either to keep pace or to move in front of it. We're trying to keep pace with it, so the challenge that we have as an ecosystem is how do we successfully implement an infrastructure that accounts for it and integrates it in different places strategically? Because I do not think that this is going to be just a hype cycle. And then how do we move from a hype cycle to a hope cycle? And the hope cycle is how do we continue to develop and integrate in a way that leverages that collective intelligence, as I mentioned, that we're able to create these cross-functional teams within our school, within our administration, within the district, to really deliver on the promise of public education. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have currently to think about. And AI has been very instrumental in helping us rethink at the district level. We're using it not just as a tool, but we're also using it to help us organize our thoughts, help us organize our themes, help us organize our feedback as well. Our superintendent utilized an AI technology to gather feedback from all of our constituents. That was consolidated, it was thematized, and that became our strategic plan. But part of it was shored up from our feedback cycles, and I think that's the biggest challenge that we have, is because we have to be able to create the sort of spaces for it at the infrastructure level, because otherwise we're just going to be grand architects, but we'll never be builders. And I think the idea is that you have to be an architect and a builder at the same time. And given the fact that the technology is changing so rapidly. How do we do that in a way, especially within the public sector, where we do not have access to this sort of venture capital to continue to grow these systems, but we rely heavily upon those individuals who are using AI for social good. And so I think the proliferation, for those of you here who are entrepreneurs and really working around the AI for social good, I really encourage all of you to please, and I encourage anyone, if you really want your AI to have an impact and be effective and efficient, you have to be within a school. You have to visit a school, you have to walk through a school, and you have to meet and have these empathetic moments with our teachers, with our students, and with our staff. Because ultimately, no matter what you do, it is going to have a through line and an impact on what we do. And what we're talking about is the state of work and our future. If we don't continue to have this connectedness, because we talk, part of the root cause is that there's a disconnect between technologists, schools, private sector, public sector, administrators, teachers, students, etc. This is an opportunity for us to really think about it concertedly and comprehensively. How are we going to build this together? The first step is empathy. If you don't have empathy for creating liberatory design, we are not going to achieve those outcomes, nor are we going to have equitable experiences. Come to the schools, visit us, talk to our students. Our students will give you incredible insight on developing and iterating and problem solving.
I'm surprised none of us talked about resistant and reluctant teachers.
Yeah, I would love to go into, that was where I was going next, which is
There aren't any in Aurora.
how do you find, what is the pushback you get? And both, I would say at a state level, but then you across the country, what's the pushback? And why are people saying no to wanting to adopt it, whether they're teachers, administrators? I have executives who say, I'm not really sure I want to use that, and I'm always trying to unpack, like, what is going on? Why would you not want to adopt it? What are you worried about? And so would just love to hear, what are some of the reasons why people are unwilling to give it a try, unwilling to utilize it in the classroom, where their parents might be worried about it? Any of those stories would be really helpful.
I'll speak to that first at the district level. So we're really fortunate. We have currently about a $4 million fund to support 8 districts who've raised their hands to be early adopters. But when I talk to the districts who are very much not those, their single biggest worry, they might say it's data privacy, but what it actually is teacher change management. And in this state, in most states, we have an enormous teacher shortage. And superintendents will say to me, if my teachers see this as one more thing, they barely made it through COVID, I'm amazed people haven't left the profession, I cannot ask them to do one more thing. And our wait and see districts are mostly worried about pushing their teachers to do something that they don't want to do. And I've heard teachers say too, this will be the thing that makes me leave the classroom, which is, super concerning in a place where we have a teacher shortage.
That's not really that different than the public or the private sector, where you have companies saying, I have such a staffing shortage, or I'm trying to do more with less, and I'm really worried about putting one more tool in front of my employee population and trying to get them to adopt it because they already feel overwhelmed. And the one thing I say to them is, this is augmenting the way that your workforce needs to work. If they're using it in the right ways and they can unlock the value of it, it actually will make them work more efficiently and effectively. And I found that stories and anecdotes are a very powerful way, so I imagine that is one way to get over the hurdle. What about you across the country? Same theme, or?
Yeah, so you gotta understand that I only work with the most progressive technological schools in the country. So I get to work with folks like Antonio, and I don't get a lot of the objections. So, and I told you a story earlier about 3 million folks adopting this platform, 3 million educators of 3 million.
Just to be clear, you are trying to sell to every school district, so you do have school districts being like, no thank you. So why do they say no thank you?
So we'll start with what the general gist of the partners say. And we folks who are in the technology leader role at this point are folks who are right around my age or a little bit older, and they saw the internet, they saw cell phones, they were scared of Wikipedia, some of them are old enough to be scared of calculators, and they'll tell me that, I know this is inevitable, and I don't want to be left behind this time. So those are our most progressive partners, but you are right, Bijal. There are folks who are resistant. We get objections. We have a sales team, and folks will tell us data privacy is a challenge. We're really proud. Today we announced that Common Sense Education just rated us at 93% for data privacy, which is about double the result that OpenAI got for ChatGPT. So, we have built this from the ground up for schools. That brings a lot of confidence to a buyer that, data privacy, not only for AI, but all technology that's used in a school building is top of mind for school districts. And then I think the last one is, it's unwieldy, it's new. And, new things are challenging to wrap their heads around. When you are a principal, you're a school, the one more thing part resonates with me. But there's also this idea of where, if we're not certain, it's hard to do something. So, one of the risks that I always name is, I don't think AI should be used all of the time in schools. I'm an English teacher, so I like when people put their pencils to paper and wrote. They need to carry the heavy lifting, they need to carry the thinking. There is a risk of over-reliance on AI. And in students' development, that is something we should take really, really seriously. And there's also a risk of, again, a student pulling out their cell phone, and this month, or October, Apple is launching their AI features in the phone. Like, it will be on their iPad, it will be in iOS. And the first time they saw generative AI, the first time they figured out what it was looking at their cell phone, or on Snapchat, their AI friend. Like, that's also a risk. So this is happening whether or not we want it to or not. So we have to mitigate both. We have to balance the risk and the opportunity. But again, I hear more and more from districts. And again, I said that we're 3 million users. We also have 5,000 schools working with us. Denver Public Schools is a partner. Aurora Public Schools is a partner. Seattle Public Schools is a partner. So, the adoption from actual districts saying yes is also extraordinary. We're limited by our size right now, but we have people batting down our door because they know this is coming, and Magic School is a good option.
Growth capital is helpful.
Yeah.
I would love to just talk a little bit more about one of the really cool things I was able to experience when I came to the Colorado Education Initiative's AI Roadmap launch was I met a group of students from St. Vrain Valley School, and one of them happened to be telling me about a program designed for seniors to help students get out into the community and help seniors learn how to and understand how to adopt generative AI. And I just think about my parents who are in their 70s who hear these words but are like, what are we talking about? And should I be using it? And I'm busy and I don't have time to sit down with them to kind of walk through these things with them. And I just was like a ray of hope. And so as you think about what's the power of teaching our youngest populations about this technology, both the pros and cons, the limitations, what it can be used for, what it shouldn't be used for? What gives you hope about the future and where we're headed? Yeah, of course.
So this year, I had the extraordinary opportunity to get back into the classroom as well, to work with a group of middle school students primarily, and it is an AI studio class. So essentially we're learning more about the technical elements associated with that. Of course, digital citizenship, all of that is embedded within it. But primarily the underpinning theme is AI for social good. How can we leverage AI to help us solve problems on a daily basis? So I've been working with the students since the beginning of the school year, and it has morphed into this whole project of how they're identifying pain points within the school, pain points within the community, and asking the AI to develop and come up with ideas, with their own ideas. Many of them are wanting to start campaigns to really talk about things that are happening, whether it's bullying or a safer community, being more environmentally sound within the school and creating greater habits. Some have been as practical as why does tidying up your room help you, right, be a better student? So the thing is that...
Did it give a good answer?
It was a phenomenal answer. And the student was just like, wait, what? Functional zones? Functional zones? So that means I have studying space here and I eat in this space? They're like, this is lights out, mister. And so I think that because our district is moving slowly and strategically, this was an opportunity for me to also learn in terms of how it's being met, and also to give students an opportunity to participate in the formal voice process. So this group is also participating in developing our AI Student Symposium, which will be the first of its kind in the state. So they're gonna have a convening where it's gonna be all teacher-led or student-led, student plenary sessions, student keynotes, etc. It's modeled after the Orange Juice AI Student Symposium that happened last year in Anaheim. A couple of our students went there, brought it back, and that's also the reason why we launched the AI Studio course, because the students are giving us feedback on what they want, and that's getting incorporated. So their AI Student Advisory Committee is also going to elevate things that they would love to see incorporated and integrated within the school district to really help build that AI ecosystem. So our students have been phenomenal. I have another student who is like going to create a whole series of plush toys, monster toys, and t-shirts that he's developing. And so he's developing a whole line. He's in 7th grade. He's just like, Mister, I can't wait to get this out to market. And I'm like, you're in 7th grade, man. And he's coming up with these designs for his plush toys, but he's been utilizing all the different platforms to really help him iterate on his ideas. And so he's thematically breaking them out. Now, would they have done this on their own? Probably, but they're working in a collective group, and so they're engaged in this project-based learning. So I think when I see how excited and how enthusiastic they are, at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, fools are like breaking camp. These kids come into this space and like, yo, let's go. They're ready to go.
Awesome.
And so this is middle school,
Yeah.
right? And they're coming after school and they're hyped to get started on their projects and share their projects. So I think that's the bright spot for the work that we're doing this year.
Awesome. Either of you, bright spot, feature?
I mean, we have lots of bright spots, but I think they all center around this idea is what an incredibly democratizing tool this is for young people. It's why I know we all feel really powerfully about tools that aren't just selling to kids or teachers as consumers, but are really focused on having young people be ready to be creators. There's a place for this, but we don't need one more tutoring product powered by AI. That was everybody's first response in the market. Instead, just really creative things that allow young people to capture the fact that they want to solve social problems. You talked about that school district that you mentioned 10 years ago was the first district in the country to use their young people to get Apple certified to be Genius Bar employees before they were old enough to work in an Apple store, and therefore decreased the needed IT staff in their school district by 20%.
No idea. That's amazing.
So that's 10 years ago, and it's just the mindset that young people are an untapped asset as opposed to just a customer base.
Yeah.
I'll close with a real, one of the most compelling use cases that I think exists for AI in its current form that's super practical. So, I am a big believer in the AI tutoring, infinitely patient tutor that just doesn't work. Kids need motivation, they need accountability, adults provide that. However, AI can be a real capacity add for a teacher. And one of the things that a teacher can do in Magic School is we have a tool called the Student Support Chatbot. You can inform this tool with a student who might have individualized learning needs. Maybe that student has an IEP, maybe that student just learns in different ways. And you can share with the AI tool, you can inform it and say, hey, you're gonna be interacting with a student who loves the New York Mets. They also do better when they get step-by-step directions. And also, when they learn math, teach it in this way if they ask you questions. Now, you think about that teacher in tandem with that AI tool, they're gonna teach that student how to engage with that tool. So they can use that tool when the teacher's not around, right? The special education teacher's not with them 24/7 at home. Also, as much as we can build amazing classroom cultures, it can feel shameful sometimes to have a teacher have to sit next to you and help you in the way that you need to be helped. But if you can build agency in the student, say, hey, look, I'm gonna let you, and I'm a special education teacher, and this is what I would exactly do. I say, look, I'm not gonna bother you if you use this tool well, and I'm gonna monitor how you use it, and if you use it and you ask for the help you need along the way, now you're an agent of your own learning, and every educator will tell you that is what we're trying to prepare our students for, to be an agent of their own learning in the future and not rely on us. So that's a really practical use case that, again, check your pulse if that's not super exciting for you. That changes the world for the first time in the history of the world, that's possible. Education is the most inspiring use case for AI, period. Come argue with me about it. Can't wait to see how this starts getting integrated more and more as folks start adopting this in more meaningful ways.
Okay, rapid fire, last question. I love practical tips and tools, and so take off your educator hat for 1 second and give me like the best way you use a generative AI tool today for yourself.
I think for me, it's just creating summaries of all of the meetings that I'm in, of all the different things, all the events, and thematizing it, and then asking myself, is there congruence with my own goals and my strategies? And I look at that at the end of the week, like how did I show up? How much did I accomplish? And yeah, so that's the way I use it.
Awesome, thanks. What do you got?
Grant writing, we raise $10 million a year in philanthropy. I have a grant writer on staff. She was using AI without wanting me to know, which as a CEO, that's a tip. Like, people don't want to confess to you how they're using this. And it's saving us, I don't know, hundreds of hours a quarter.
So I went from principal to tech founder, changed industries. So I got a lot of documents, a lot of words I've never heard before. I'll often upload those documents. I'll often, hey, read this email, explain it to me as someone who doesn't know what any of this means. And it has accelerated my growth dramatically in being able to be a software.
Things like ARR, what's your, yeah.
Right?
Annual
What's good? It's a good number.
What does boil the ocean mean? What the hell?
All right, we're out of time. Thank you all. Please give our